Now that we learned about props, we're basically done with our first custom component. This expense item component is now reusable, and we can use this props concept to configure it differently every time that we're using it, so that the 4 times we're using expense item here, we're also getting a different output 4 times. I also just want to emphasize again that here we are indeed setting the values for the props dynamically with this single curly brace syntax, but we could also just have a hard-coded value like this here, if that is what we needed. So props are not limited to dynamically set values. We can do that, but we don't have to. The main idea behind props is always the same though. We want to make sure that we can pass data into our components to make them configurable and reusable. Now let's continue working on that expense item component, and let's continue working on that date. Because at the moment, this is clearly not too pretty, not too human readable. And instead of showing it like this, I instead want to have this calendar-like look, which you see here in this preview. I want to have my date look like that. And therefore, of course, we need to change that HTML code, that JSX code, and I'm using these terms interchangeably as well. We need to change that, which is responsible for outputting that date. And here, to build such a calendar look, we could say that inside of that main div, which should hold the overall date element, we want to have 3 individual divs like this, where the topmost div is responsible for outputting the month, the middle div is responsible for outputting the year, and the bottom div then shows the day. That's something we could do. And of course, for that, we want to extract month, year, and day from the incoming date. So from that date prop which we're setting. For that here, for the month, we can output a value dynamically in access props.date. And now what? How can we now output the month here? Well, we can use a built-in method which is accessible on all date objects in JavaScript. We can call the toLocaleString method. Now, this is not a React-specific method. You can Google for JS toLocaleString to find an official article on this method. And this method simply helps you with outputting dates in human-readable formats. And you can simply call it and then pass in 2 arguments, where the first argument is basically the language. And here I'll use ENUS to go with English. And then the second argument is an object where you configure how specifically that date should be formatted. And here we got different options where you can find more details in that article which you can find. Here you can learn more about the various ways of configuring this and using this. And here we can set month to long, for example. That's one of the provided options or one of the supported options. And if we do that and save this, we see that August and March and June are being output here, so that we got a human readable way of outputting that month. Now, doing that all in line here in that JSX code clearly works. As I mentioned earlier when I introduced this syntax, you can have expressions like this between the curly braces. But it is considered a better practice, and it leads to cleaner code, if you extract logic like that and don't put it into your JSX code, but instead you create a separate helper variable or constant. Something like month here, which simply holds that value. And then here, between your curly braces in the JSX code, you just point at that helper variable or constant. By doing it like this, you keep your JSX code lean, and you have your more complex logic in the rest of this function, so that this overall is easier to read. And now we can do something similar for the day and the year. For the day, we can access props.date toLocaleString ENUS. And then here, pass in a configuration where we say that we want to format just the day and output it in a 2-digit format. And we can add a year helper constant where we access props.date, and then actually just access getFullYear, which is another built-in method which just extracts the year as a 4-digit number. And now we can use these helper constants to output their values like this in our JSX code. And if we do that and save that file, now we see the month, the year, and also the day in the month. And that's the raw data which I want to have here. Now, of course, one crucial thing is missing, and that would be the styling. But before we add that, let's talk about splitting components.